Hey, 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 Dr. M here. Always a pleasure to be able to connect with you all on the Peace Driven Leader podcast. This is a lounge where we're taking real leaders, you all, who are wives and moms and husbands, parents and daughters in all different roles, and they are determined and devoted to the one role that matters most, and that's their divine identity. And sometimes we can get caught up in the roles that we lose sight of who we are. And oftentimes we can get into cultures that begin to reshape, who we are. And so we want to have these type of conversations with leaders who understand what it means to be a peace-driven leader so that we can begin to have more and more global conversations around this and to create almost like permission and a standard, a universal standard on leadership. So peace is the new standard of leadership. It's not a luxury, right? And so this particular podcast is really a Peace Driven Leader Insight podcast that we do. If you're just not following us, one of the things that I love to do is just have a really candid conversation. I have a ton of notes. I go back and I reflect on the conversation that I just had. This one is from Camille. She's a licensed professional, has been in the counseling space for over 2 decades. And I really was impressed by her ability to really neutralize the conversation around faith and mental health. And for those of you who may not know this, mental health has really ran havoc in my family. And my brother, we're only 10 months apart. That was the first time that I was introduced to it in such a personal level. And he was diagnosed with schizophrenia at 19. And I believe, and this is just me, I really to my core. Yes, I do believe that there's a gene in our family, especially for the males when it comes to schizophrenia. But I also do believe that certain drugs, like he was smoking weed during that time. He was in high school, and sometimes when you introduce your body to outside chemicals like, weed and um, other things, substances, it can really ignite, and trigger these genetics that like mental health. And because I mean, the moment he did it, I mean, he came back, he was just never the same. And I love these insights, these podcast insights, because it gives me a space to just kind of give you all what the conversation brought about from a peace-driven leader lens. And it also gives me an opportunity to kind of show my personal feelings and thoughts about the conversation, because during the podcast, my goal is really to lift these leaders and let them display their gift at the highest level, their wisdom, their insight, to give you all the greatest value. And so my hope is that as you listen to these insights, that you're going to begin to digest at an even deeper level a lot of the things that we were talking about. To be like, I didn't think about it like that. Or man, I missed that. I didn't catch that. And so we're really being able to see things from a peace-driven leader lens. And so let's dive into it. You'll see me look down. It's just because I have so many notes. It helps me to make sure that I get the nuggets, the core nuggets out of the conversation. So if you're taking notes, corporate excellence requires inner regulation. And that was a lot of what we were talking about. She didn't really speak a lot to the environment, which I appreciated, because you're in corporate, of course you can use it, but it expanded past the environment you're in. We were talking about the way in which you embody your leadership and what that looks like and how you can think through your values and your principles and your standards in a way that causes your nervous system to feel regulated. You're not selling your soul, right? And how do you do that without fear of judgment? And how do you do that without offending someone else? So she really gave some very neutralized perspectives that I could really appreciate when it came to integrating the faith and the counseling and what you look for when you're looking for a therapist. And, what do you do when you feel like the chemistry is off? Like she really showed up and how she responded to those things. We talked a lot about, serving the whole leader. So she interweaved that a lot in the conversation. And you'll also hear me talk about mind, body, spirit, right? We're trifold being. There's dimensions to us. There's multiple dimensions. And so when you're feeding your mind, your body, and your spirit every day, that is key. And so I would be remiss if I didn't pause here to remind you all, if you have not downloaded our app, the iLead We Rise app, definitely do that now. Matter of fact, pause this podcast right now. Find the link in the comments or wherever you're listening to this to, and go ahead and subscribe and download the app, because that's exactly what the app does. It anchors you into your divine identity, so you're not being swayed to and fro. And it's really easy to do. I'm gonna be honest. Even when you know you're convicted, the culture is getting so clever, and with artificial intelligence, even the very elite are being deceived. Sound familiar? So we want to make sure that we are using these tools like this app that's going to keep you true to yourself, and like run questions by you to make sure, does this validate? Does this resonate? And that way you're being your wholeness is not being biased, right? And it's not being suppressed. 'Cause that's another thing that we talked about when it comes to especially the mental health space and being a professional. Sometimes, the church community and Christian community can bash you and feel like you're not, being true to your faith because you're accepting clients that believe all things. And if you haven't listened to the episode, I really want to encourage you, admonish you even to go back, because what she said in response to that was so powerful and it's so sobering. Like, she doesn't, you could tell she's passionate about her work, but she's not like overly just expressive to the point where it feels that she is not open. And she has this very like unassuming, hey, good question, and I could really appreciate that. Very transparent. She talked about the importance of just making an informed decision, consent, just giving consent. So, whenever you're talking to a client, whenever you're talking to, people in the workspace or anybody, there's a time where you just ask for consent. Hey, I am a woman of faith, or I'm a man of faith, so I believe this, do you give me consent to be able to share my beliefs concerning this, and they just give consent or not. And so just keeping that kind of creates like this integral boundary line, so that it doesn't feel like I'm manipulating you or like weaving in subconsciously my beliefs to cause you to think some other kind of way, just really integral in her point of view. And I'll leave you all with two key points, and I'll close with a wrap up for you to kind of take with you on your day. Perspective is a leadership asset. And I really want you all to lean in, because growth often requires exposure to perspectives that disrupt your comfort. And this is what I was telling you all about with this podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to disrupt your comfort. And too often I feel like we like to stay in our comfort zone. Like that's like we confuse that as alignment even. Like, oh yeah, I feel good. Yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be because of the way I feel. But no, let's shake that up. Let's lean in a little bit more, because you want to choose support that's not in direct congruency with every single thing you believe and how you believe it, because that's part of the problem, right? You're the hardest person you'll ever lead. You hear me say that often. And you just want to use wisdom when it comes to the type of people. Now, when it comes to principles, standards, and values, yeah, we all have a little bit different, but for the most part, you want people that have core anchoring values that align. But outside of that, perspective, that's something that you want to keep people around you with different perspectives. That's something that you want to be expansive. Like, you want different viewpoints. You want unfamiliar frameworks and respectful challenge. That's growth. And that's what we want to get. That's what we want to offer and deliver you through these podcasts. Now, last but certainly not least, is discernment is the starting point. And that goes when you're thinking about who you're going to have on board as a therapist, discerning in that first phone call. Is there chemistry there? How does this feel? Even how they respond, their personality. Because one of the things she said is like, yeah, it could be some kind of past trauma that's causing you to resist, but why go into it with resistance to that level? You're already going to have some resistance as it is. So why add unnecessary resistance? Just find somebody that you feel at peace with, you feel regulated with, that you feel is open, that you feel safe. That's the word. safe with. That's the key because once you feel safe with a person, then there's vulnerability. And once there's vulnerability, there is transformation. All right. Vulnerability is truly a gateway of massive transformation. And so the repeated question that kept ringing throughout the whole podcast was, what do you want? And I'll ask you that in this very moment. What do you want? Answer that question first. And then from that question, it's going to give you clarity about who should be the therapist. What type of skills and knowledge should they have and experiences should they have that's going to help get you what you came for. And we even talked about outcomes and how you know when you hit your outcomes. So I can't give all the juicy details away, but I can give you enough to say that you are the captain of your own ship, right? Peace is not the absence of pressure. That's the thing that I really want people to understand. It's the capacity to lead with clearly within the pressure. Okay. So peace is not the absence of pressure. It's the capacity to lead well within the pressure, right? And so, yes, you're going to have people that's going to spew out their opinions or thoughts or whatever. But in order for you to stay regulated, it's going to come first with, understanding your identity, and your identity is rooted in your principles, your standards, and your values and what that looks like. And then being consistent because there's certain things that are just not a part of who you are yet. And that's okay. But that app, what it does is it allows you to make it a part of who you are through consistency, right? So if you struggle with consistency or you want to level up, it's a perfect tool for you to be able to have as a companion as you love, live, and lead differently, right? Because this is the next level standard. One of the things we talked about is the type of standards, how we all have different standards. And at the end of the day, when we really think about it, man, we have way more in common than we have that's different. And so I'll leave you with this. The conversation that we discussed on our podcast with Camille was about sustainable leadership is not about doing more, it's about integrating better, right? So you'll hear me as a life, leadership, and legacy integration strategist. The biggest thing that I do, my secret sauce, is pulling all the things, right? Your principles, your standards, your values, your family mission, your vision, the people that you currently have that are holding you accountable, your pro team. Most people don't have one, but we help you get one. And really pulling all of these tools and contacts and projects that you have going on and integrate it into a blueprint that's going to allow you to show up every day in the most authentic and integral way possible. And that's really how you live a life where people remember who you are. Right. And so if you have just heard about me, you just found out about the movement, the Peace Driven Leader movement, welcome. And we welcome you to the lounge and we ask that you continue to lean in, continue to challenge yourself and challenge your perspectives. And we look forward to connecting with you again on the next episode. Bye bye for now.